Story 1. The roommate who never slept. When I started college, I was nervous like anyone else moving out for the first time. I didn't know what to expect about dorm life, but I figured it would be fun. Loud, messy, full of late night talks and laughs. My roommate, Tyler, wasn't really like that. It was quiet, polite, always stayed to himself. Honestly, I thought I lucked out. No party animal, no drama, just a guy who kept to his laptop. But after a week, I realized something strange about him. He never seemed to sleep. I'd stay up late sometimes, writing papers or scrolling on my phone. At 2 or 3 in the morning, Tyler would still be there, sitting on his bed with his laptop open. When I woke up early for class, he'd be in the exact same spot. I thought maybe he was just a gamer. But after a while, I noticed his laptop wasn't always on. Sometimes he'd just sit there, upright in bed, in the dark, not typing, not moving, just staring. One night, around 3 a.m., I sat up and asked, "Dude, do you ever sleep? Okay?" He turned his head toward me slowly. In the faint glow from his screen, his face looked pale, hollow, his eyes almost too wide. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile. It was small, sharp, and he said, "I sleep when you sleep." I laughed, trying to make light of it. "So, what? You're on some vampire schedule or something?" He didn't laugh. He just went back to staring at his laptop. I brushed it off at first. College makes people weird. But then things escalated. Some nights, I'd wake up to find him standing in the middle of the room, not moving, facing my bed. When I asked what he was doing, he'd mutter, stretching my legs, and crawl back into bed. Another time, I came back from class early and caught him at my desk. Kay was flipping through my notebook, reading, looking for a pen, he said quickly, closing it and walking away. But the worst was one night when I woke up gasping from a nightmare. My heart was pounding, and I opened my eyes to see a shadow looming over me. It was Tyler. He was standing right above me, leaning down, his face inches from mine, just staring. I jumped back and shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Without a word, he straightened up, walked back to his bed, and laid down. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the housing office and begged for a room change. When I mentioned Tyler's name, the woman behind the desk sighed, grabbed a form, and started writing. No questions, no hesitation. That week, I ran into one of his old roommates, asked him if he'd had problems with Tyler too. The guy's face went pale. He leaned in and whispered. He used to stand over me while I slept. Sometimes, I swear, he whispered things. They move him every semester. Nobody lasts long with him. I didn't press for details. I didn't want to know. But even years later, I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, feeling like I'm being watched. And I hear his voice in my head, whispering those words with that faint, unnatural smile. "I sleep when you sleep." Story 2. The locked dorm room during my sophomore year. I lived in one of the oldest dorm buildings on campus. It was tall and narrow, all brick and creaking pipes. It's the kind of place where the radiators bang at night and the hallways echo when someone walks down them. On the 3rd floor, right next to my room, was a door that was always locked. It looked like any other dorm room door. White paint, silver handle, a little slot for a name tag. But no one ever lived there. At first, I thought it was just a storage, or maybe a staff room. But the thing was, sometimes you'd hear things behind that door. I remember the first time clearly. It was around midnight, and I was walking back from the lounge. The hallway was silent, except for a faint sound coming from that locked room. It was whispering. At first, I thought maybe someone was inside. But the whispers weren't clear. They sounded muffled, jumbled, almost like someone talking in their sleep. The next day, I asked my RA about it. She shrugged and said, "That room hasn't been assigned for years. Plumbing issues, I think." Then she changed the subject quickly, but the noises continued. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear light scratching from behind the door, like fingernails dragging along wood. Other times, it sounded like someone pacing slowly back and forth. One night, around 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing thumping noises, irregular, like something bumping against the walls. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I walked into the hall and pressed my ear against the locked door. At first, silence, then faint breathing, slow, steady, like someone standing right on the other side. I froze, hardly daring to breathe myself. Then, suddenly, the handle jiggled, just once, not hard, as if whoever was inside had tried to turn it. I backed away quickly and hurried back to my room, locking my own door. For the next week, I avoided the hallway late at night. But one weekend, when most people had gone home, the building was quiet. Too quiet. That's when things escalated. I was in bed when I woke up to a soft knock. At first, I thought it was my door. But then I realized it was coming from the locked room next door. It started slow, 3 knocks, then silence. A minute later, 3 more. I lay there, heart racing, staring at my ceiling. The knocking continued, steady, like someone trying to get out. Finally, I couldn't take it. I opened my door and looked down the hallway. It was empty. The knocking stopped the moment I stepped out. I stood there, staring at that locked door, debating whether to try the handle. But I didn't. I went back inside and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The following Monday, I decided to ask one of the janitors. They'd been working there for years, so I figured they'd know. When I mentioned the room, his face dropped. He looked around the hallway before whispering, "Don't mess with that room. Back in the 90s, a student hung himself in there. Nobody found him for weeks. By the time they did, it wasn't good." The smell spread through the whole floor. They tried to renovate, but strange things kept happening. People hearing voices, seeing shadows. Nobody stays there anymore. I wanted to believe he was just trying to scare me. But that night, as I lay in bed, I heard something I'll never forget. A voice, clear this time, coming through the wall. It was low, raspy, and it whispered, "Let me out." I froze, every hair on my body standing up. Then came the scratching. Violent this time, like claws raking down the inside of the wall between our rooms. I grabbed my phone, turned on some music, and forced myself under the covers, shaking until I fell asleep. A week later, I came back from class to find something new. On my door, 3 long scratches, deep, uneven grooves in the paint, as if something or someone had reached out from that locked room and dragged its nails across my door. The housing office painted over it the next day. They didn't ask questions. They didn't explain. And that room stayed locked. But the whispers, they never stopped. Even years later, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had tried to handle that night. Part of me thinks I know the answer. And part of me is terrified that one day someone else will. Story 3. The Student Who Vanished. During my freshman year, I lived in a dorm that was considered one of the better ones on campus. It was newer, with nicer furniture and big windows. But what happened that year left a mark on me that no amount of renovations could ever erase. Across the hall from me lived a girl named Emily. She was quiet, kept to herself, but friendly enough to nod or say hi. She was the type who studied late in the common room with her headphones in, sipping coffee at all hours. For the first month, everything was normal. But then people began to notice she wasn't around as much. At first, we assumed she was busy. Classes were tough, and some students practically lived in the library. But then her roommate, a girl named Kara, mentioned something odd. She told us Emily hadn't slept in their room for 3 nights in a row. When Kara asked her about it, Emily just said, "It's too loud in here," and left. That didn't make sense though. Our floor was one of the quietest in the building, so more strange things started to surface. Kara said she would wake up in the middle of the night and see Emily standing in front of the window, just staring outside, not moving, not blinking. When she asked what she was doing, Emily only said, "They're calling me." Naturally, Kara thought Emily was joking, or maybe stressed. But then Emily stopped coming back altogether. The last time anyone saw her, she was sitting in the common room at 4 a.m., still staring out the window. Her books were open in front of her, but she wasn't studying. She was just watching the dark courtyard outside, whispering to herself. The next morning, she was gone. At first, people thought she went home, but her stuff was still in the dorm. Her clothes, her laptop, even her phone charger, all untouched. Campus security got involved. Then the police. They questioned students, searched the building, but nothing turned up. Weeks passed, and eventually, everyone stopped talking about it. Classes resumed. Life moved on. But our floor never felt the same. Here's the part that still haunts me. A few nights after the search ended, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging footsteps. I figured it was just someone going to the bathroom, but the footsteps stopped outside my door. I held my breath, listening. Then came a faint knock. 3 times. I sat up in bed, frozen. Another knock, louder this time. Finally, I whispered, "Who is it?" No answer. After a few seconds, I got up the courage to look through the peephole. There was no one there. The hallway was empty. I tried to go back to sleep, but just as I was drifting off, I heard something else. A voice, soft, almost like a whisper, coming from under my door. It was a girl's voice, kinda sad. "They're calling me too." The next morning, I checked the hallway. On the floor in front of my door, written faintly in chalk, were 3 words. "Let me in." No one else admitted to writing it. The Ross swore she didn't see anyone in the hallway that night. To this day, Emily has never been found. Her parents pulled her things out of the dorm a month later, and a new student moved into her room. But late at night, when the building is quiet, I sometimes still hear footsteps in the hall. And sometimes I hear that soft whisper right outside my door. They're calling me. Those were 3 creepy, true college dorm horror stories with dark secrets. Living in a dorm is supposed to be about new beginnings, making friends, finding independence, and building memories. But for some people, dorm life holds something much darker. Which story scared you the most? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories.